He wasn't supposed to survive. The words echoed through Jack Carter's mind as he sat in his favorite chair, the silence of the room pressing down on him. His world had become smaller over the years, the only companion he had left being the memories of the past, memories of the battlefield, of brotherhood, and of Titan. Titan, the loyal police dog who had saved his life more times than he could count. The very dog he had to leave behind when his own mission ended. Jack had been blind for years now, the result of a roadside explosion that took away more than his sight. It took away his purpose. But what hurt more than anything was the thought of Titan, out there somewhere, living out his retirement after years of service to the law, to Jack, and to the people they protected together. Jack's heart weighed heavy with the thought of his old friend, and though he had heard that Titan was safe, the thought of seeing him again was something Jack wasn't ready to face. Not after all this time, not with the painful memories of their final moments together. He never expected that call. When the phone rang, it wasn't a number he recognized, but when he picked up, the voice on the other end changed everything. "Jack, we've got Titan. He's been waiting for you." It was like time stopped. The words sank deep into his soul. Titan, waiting for him. The emotions flooded Jack's chest. Hope, confusion, excitement, fear. The man who had once been a soldier, once led others into battle, now felt lost, uncertain about what this reunion would be like. But deep down, he knew he couldn't ignore this call. He couldn't let his old friend wait any longer. Jack knew it was time. He couldn't put it off any longer. He needed to see Titan again, even if it meant facing everything he had tried to bury. A mix of excitement and anxiety churned in his stomach as he grabbed his coat and made his way out the door. He had no idea what he was about to walk into, but one thing was clear. Seeing Titan again was going to change everything. Titan, the fierce protector, the brave K-9 who had always been by his side, was waiting for him. The reunion was no longer a dream, but a reality that was going to shake Jack to his very core. As Jack stepped out into the cold morning air, he felt a deep sense of longing. He could almost feel Titan's presence beside him, like he had so many times before, standing guard, ready to face whatever came next. Jack wasn't sure what to expect, but he knew one thing for sure. This was going to be the most important moment of his life. And it would be a reunion that would not only bring back his memories, but maybe, just maybe, bring back a part of him that he had thought was lost forever. The drive felt longer than it should have. Jack's hands gripped the wheel tightly, the steering wheel cool beneath his fingers. His mind raced with memories of Titan, how the dog had stood by him through it all, from the high-intensity moments in the field to the quiet nights back home. Titan had been his constant, his partner, and now, here he was, driving to meet him after all this time. The miles seemed to stretch out endlessly, but with every turn, Jack's anticipation grew stronger. As he turned down a narrow, tree-lined road, his heart skipped a beat when he saw the small building in the distance. The sign above read Retired K-9 Care Center. This was it. His eyes searched the parking lot, but all he saw were empty spaces, save for one. The familiar sight of a black and tan German shepherd sitting patiently next to a woman holding a leash caught his eye. For a moment, Jack thought his heart would stop. It was Titan. Jack slowed the car to a stop, unsure of what to do next. He hadn't expected to feel this overwhelmed. Titan was older now, his once muscular frame softened by age, but those amber eyes, the same eyes Jack had trusted so many times before, were still filled with that familiar warmth. The woman holding Titan's leash smiled softly as Jack stepped out of the car, his cane tapping against the ground with each step. "I take it you're Jack," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "Titan's been waiting for you." Jack nodded, his throat tightening. The moment was here, the moment he had both longed for and dreaded. Titan's tail began to wag slowly as Jack approached, and despite the years apart, the bond between them seemed as strong as ever. The woman unclipped Titan's leash and stepped back, giving Jack space. Jack crouched down, his hands shaking slightly as he reached out. Titan's nose nudged his hand, and Jack could feel the familiar, comforting warmth of the dog he had once relied on so deeply. "It's you, boy," Jack whispered, a tear slipping down his cheek. The years apart, the distance, the silence, all of it seemed to fade away as Titan nuzzled him gently. "I'm sorry I couldn't be there," Jack murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Titan didn't need words to understand. He was here, by Jack's side again. The dog licked Jack's hand, as if to reassure him that nothing had changed, that they were still a team. The air around them felt lighter, the weight of time and separation lifted in that single moment. As Jack stood up, Titan followed him closely, never leaving his side. It was as if the dog was saying, "I'm still here. I'm still with you." Jack didn't know how to explain it, but there was something magical about this moment. The years of pain, the loneliness, the battles fought both on and off the field. It all seemed to disappear as Titan walked beside him once again. Jack felt a warmth spreading through him that he hadn't felt in years. He was no longer alone. The road ahead seemed less daunting, and for the first time in a long while, Jack felt a glimmer of hope. Titan was back, and so was Jack's sense of purpose. It wasn't just a reunion. It was a new beginning, a second chance for both of them. As they walked together toward the car, Jack smiled softly. "We've got this," he thought. And for the first time in a long while, he truly believed it. The days that followed felt like a dream to Jack. He and Titan quickly settled into a routine, though Jack's world was still clouded by the absence of his sight. But with Titan by his side, the darkness didn't seem so overwhelming. Each morning, Titan would nudge Jack awake, his tail thumping the floor as he eagerly awaited their first walk of the day. Jack could hear the sound of Titan's paws on the ground beside him, each step a reminder that he was no longer alone. For the first time in years, Jack felt connected to something beyond his own thoughts. Titan had become his eyes, guiding him through the day with a steady presence. When they walked through the park, Titan's alert eyes scanned their surroundings, and Jack trusted him implicitly. The bond they shared had not only survived the time apart, but had grown stronger, as if the years they spent apart had been nothing more than a brief pause in their journey together. Jack often found himself reminiscing about their past, how Titan had saved his life more times than he could count, how they had been a team on the battlefield. But this was different. This was a second chance at life, a chance to rediscover the world with his old friend by his side. One afternoon, as they sat on the porch, Jack felt a warm breeze brush across his face. Titan lay beside him, resting his head on Jack's knee. Jack reached down and ran his fingers through Titan's fur, feeling the familiar roughness that had been a constant source of comfort throughout the years. "You're a good boy, Titan," Jack whispered softly, the words barely audible. Titan's ears perked up at the sound of his name, and he shifted closer, nudging Jack's hand with his nose. Jack smiled, his heart swelling with gratitude. There were days when he still felt the weight of the past, the loss, the pain, but in these quiet moments with Titan, it felt like the world was right again. As the weeks went by, Jack's confidence grew. He no longer felt like a stranger in his own life. With Titan by his side, he felt like he could face anything. The simple act of walking down the street, something most people took for granted, had become an adventure. Jack had learned to listen to the sounds around him, the rustling of leaves, the chirping of birds, the distant hum of traffic. And Titan, always at his side, kept him grounded. One evening, as they walked through the park, Jack could feel a familiar sense of peace wash over him. The sky was painted with shades of orange and pink as the sun began to set. Titan walked beside him, his body relaxed, his tail wagging gently. Jack couldn't help but feel a deep sense of contentment. This was where he was meant to be, beside Titan, in the quiet moments that made life feel whole again. They stopped by the pond, and Jack sat down on the bench, listening to the soft ripples in the water. Titan sat at his feet, his head resting on Jack's lap. In that moment, Jack realized that no matter what happened in the future, he would always have Titan. The bond they shared was unbreakable, a testament to the loyalty and love that had carried them both through the darkest times. As the stars began to twinkle above, Jack leaned back, his heart full. "We've got this, Titan," he whispered. And for the first time in years, Jack truly believed it. As the days turned into weeks, Jack began to settle into a rhythm with Titan. Every morning, the two of them would head out for a walk through the neighborhood. Jack had learned to rely on Titan's subtle cues, the way the dog's body would tense when something was near, or how Titan would gently nudge him when it was time to turn. Their bond had grown beyond that of just man and dog. It was a partnership, a trust that transcended words. One morning, Jack found himself standing at the edge of the park, a place he had often visited with Titan before the accident. The air was crisp, the ground covered in a light frost, and the sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon. Titan stood beside him, his tail wagging lazily, as if to say, "It's a new day. Let's go." Jack smiled, feeling the warmth of the dog's presence. He knew they had come a long way since that first hesitant reunion, but there was something about today that felt different. Maybe it was the calm in the air, or the fact that they had found their way back to each other, but for the first time in a long while, Jack felt at peace. Titan, sensing his calm, stayed close, his head resting gently against Jack's leg. The two of them stood there for what felt like an eternity, just taking in the quiet beauty of the moment. Jack had always taken his surroundings for granted before. He had never really appreciated the little things, the way the wind felt against his skin or the soft murmur of the world around him. But now, with Titan by his side, everything seemed more vivid, more real. Titan had taught him to slow down, to savor the simple moments that life offered. As they continued their walk, Jack couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed. Before the accident, he had been a man of action, always on the move, always chasing the next mission, the next challenge. But now, he had learned the value of stillness, of being present. Titan had given him that gift. He had shown Jack that there was more to life than just surviving. There was living. And living meant appreciating the small things, the fleeting moments of joy that came from simply being alive. One afternoon, as Jack sat in the backyard, Titan lay next to him, his body relaxed and content. Jack could hear the distant sound of children playing and the soft rustle of the wind through the trees. He smiled to himself, thinking about how much he had missed these simple pleasures. Titan's presence had brought a sense of peace to his life that he hadn't even realized he needed. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the yard, Jack knew that he was no longer the man he used to be. The old Jack had been driven by ambition, by the need to prove something, to make a difference. But now, the new Jack was content with just being with Titan, being at peace with the world around him. The journey hadn't been easy, and there were still days when the weight of his past threatened to pull him under. But with Titan by his side, Jack knew that he could face whatever came next. They had been through so much together, and now, they were walking forward together, one step at a time, with no need to look back. For the first time in years, Jack felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. It had been months since Jack and Titan's reunion, and life had settled into a quiet routine. Jack had become more confident in his daily life, no longer feeling like the world was out of his reach. The darkness of his blindness had lessened with Titan by his side, guiding him not only through the streets but through the emotional fog he had carried with him for so long. They had become a team in every sense of the word. One chilly morning, Jack sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, while Titan rested beside him. The air was crisp, the ground covered with the first signs of frost. It was a peaceful morning, the kind Jack had learned to appreciate, where the world seemed to pause for just a moment. He smiled softly as he felt Titan's warm presence beside him. Titan shifted, nudging Jack's hand as if to remind him that it was time to go for their morning walk. Jack chuckled under his breath and stood up, feeling Titan's energy, always ready to move, always eager to explore. As they walked down the street, Jack couldn't help but marvel at how far they had come. He could hear the birds singing in the trees, the rustle of leaves in the wind, the faint hum of cars in the distance. Every sound was more vivid now, more real, and Jack had learned to navigate through these noises with Titan as his guide. They reached the park, and Jack sat on one of the benches, listening to the sounds of children playing in the distance, the gentle creak of the swings as they moved back and forth. Titan lay at his feet, his head resting on Jack's knee, a silent companion in these peaceful moments. Jack closed his eyes for a moment, breathing in the fresh air, feeling the warmth of the sun on his face. Life had been hard, but it had become something more with Titan at his side. The days were still long, and there were still challenges ahead, but Jack knew he could face them now. He wasn't alone anymore. Titan had brought him back to life in ways he couldn't fully explain. Jack had found a new purpose, a new way of living. It wasn't about chasing after the next big thing, the next mission. It was about living in the moment, appreciating the simple joys that came with just being alive. That was something Titan had taught him, how to slow down and appreciate the world around him. As they sat together, Jack reflected on the journey they had been through, the struggles they had faced, and the healing they had found in each other. It wasn't just about the physical bond they shared, but the emotional connection that had been built over time, a bond that had transcended the battlefield and the separation they had endured. They were more than just man and dog. They were a family. Jack knew that no matter what came next, no matter where life took them, Titan would always be by his side, his loyal companion. And with that thought, Jack felt a deep sense of peace. It wasn't about the past or the future anymore. It was about the present, about being with Titan, about enjoying the moments they had together. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting a warm glow over the park, Jack and Titan sat together in silence, content in the knowledge that they had found something far more valuable than anything they had ever known before. They had found home in each other. As the weeks turned into months, Jack found himself growing even more accustomed to the quiet life he now shared with Titan. The world outside their small home seemed distant, almost unimportant compared to the bond they had formed. Jack had always been someone who thrived on action, always pushing forward, always in motion. But now, with Titan at his side, he found peace in simply being. One chilly evening, as the two of them sat by the fire, Jack reflected on just how much had changed. The pain, the grief, and the loneliness that had once consumed him now seemed like distant memories. With Titan, he had found something he never expected: comfort. The kind of comfort that came from knowing you weren't alone, even when the world seemed quiet and still. Titan, sensing his mood, nudged Jack's hand with his nose, a gentle reminder that he was always there, always ready to offer his companionship. Jack smiled softly, reaching down to scratch Titan behind the ears. "You're my best friend," Jack whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Titan responded with a soft grunt, his eyes closing in contentment. The warmth from the fire crackled in the background, but it was the bond between them that truly made the room feel like home. They were a team, not just a man and his dog, but two souls that had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances. The following days were filled with moments of quiet joy. They spent mornings walking through the nearby woods, Jack listening to the sounds of the forest while Titan led the way with a calm certainty that made Jack feel safe, even in the unknown. He didn't need sight to appreciate the beauty around him anymore. Titan's presence was enough to guide him, to help him navigate the world he had once felt so disconnected from. As the seasons changed, Jack found himself embracing the simplicity of life. There was no rush, no pressure, just the steady rhythm of days spent with Titan, side by side. Sometimes, they would sit on the porch together, watching the sunset as the sky shifted into hues of orange and pink. Other times, Jack would read aloud to Titan, his voice breaking the silence of the evening as Titan lay beside him, always present, always listening. One afternoon, Jack found himself standing at the edge of the forest, Titan by his side. The air was crisp, and the leaves rustled in the breeze, a sound Jack had learned to love. Titan stood tall, his ears perked as he watched the world around them. Jack reached out and placed his hand on Titan's back, feeling the warmth of his coat beneath his fingers. In that moment, Jack realized how far they had come. He had once been a man lost in the darkness, searching for meaning in a world that felt cold and distant. But now, with Titan, he had found something more than just a companion. He had found a reason to live, a reason to keep moving forward, one step at a time. Jack closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the moment settle into his chest. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living, and it was because of Titan. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the forest floor, Jack smiled, knowing that no matter what the future held, he and Titan would face it together. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, Jack felt ready to meet it, with Titan by his side, guiding him every step of the way. As the months passed, Jack's world had transformed in ways he never imagined. The days, once filled with a sense of loss and isolation, were now woven with moments of peace and connection, thanks to Titan. The two had found their rhythm, moving through life together, side by side, each step a testament to the bond they shared. One brisk autumn morning, Jack stood at the window, gazing out at the changing leaves. The trees, once lush with green, were now ablaze with shades of red, orange, and yellow. Titan sat beside him, his head resting on Jack's knee as the wind rustled the branches outside. "It's a good day, huh?" Jack murmured, his voice soft but filled with a quiet contentment. Titan gave a slight wag of his tail in agreement, his amber eyes watching Jack as if to say, "Yes, it's a perfect day." The morning sunlight streamed through the window, casting a golden glow across the room. Jack took a deep breath, savoring the stillness. It had been a while since he had truly allowed himself to feel at peace, but with Titan by his side, he had learned to embrace these small, quiet moments. He didn't need to chase after anything anymore. He was exactly where he needed to be. The door creaked open, and Jack felt Titan's body tense slightly beside him. But it wasn't a sense of fear or alertness that made Titan react. It was the sound of someone he had come to know as part of their small family. Jack turned and smiled as the familiar figure of his neighbor, Sarah, stepped into the room. She was a kind woman, always offering a helping hand when Jack needed it, always ready with a warm smile. "Good morning, Jack," Sarah greeted softly, her voice warm and inviting. She had brought over a basket of freshly baked bread, as she did every week. "I thought you might want some company this morning." Jack smiled, his heart lifting with gratitude. "That sounds perfect, Sarah," he replied. Titan, ever the friendly companion, rose to his feet and trotted over to Sarah, tail wagging happily. Sarah knelt down to give Titan a gentle scratch behind the ears, her fingers brushing through his thick fur. "You're looking as strong as ever, aren't you, boy?" Sarah said, laughing softly. Jack chuckled in response, watching the two of them interact. It was moments like these that reminded him of the simple joys of life, sharing a cup of coffee, enjoying a quiet moment with friends, and watching Titan continue to bring joy to everyone he met. As the day wore on, Jack and Sarah sat at the kitchen table, talking about the weather, the changing seasons, and the little things that made life special. Titan lay by Jack's feet, content to simply be near him. He had become more than just a companion. He was a bridge between Jack and the world around him. With Titan, Jack had reconnected with life in ways he never thought possible. His days no longer felt like an endless march toward the unknown. Now, there was a rhythm to life, a flow that made each moment worth savoring. Jack knew that his journey wasn't over, and that there would be challenges ahead. But with Titan by his side, he felt ready to face whatever came next. The past no longer held the same weight it once had, and the future seemed less daunting. For the first time in a long while, Jack felt as though he had found his place in the world. He was not defined by what he had lost, but by what he had found. Titan, the dog who had brought him back to life. And as he looked out the window once more, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Jack realized that he had finally come home. The cold winter air settled in over the small town, but inside the warmth of Jack's home, everything felt peaceful. Jack sat by the fire, Titan curled up next to him, the soft crackle of the flames filling the silence. It had been a quiet few days, but Jack couldn't help but think about how much his life had changed in such a short time. He looked down at Titan, who was gently breathing beside him, and a wave of gratitude washed over him. The dog had not only been his guide through the dark streets of life, but had also been the key to rediscovering the joy in simple moments. Jack had always been a man who sought purpose in action, in missions, in doing something that mattered. But now his purpose was different. It was in the quiet moments shared with Titan, in the gentle companionship, in the small victories of getting through each day. As the fire flickered, Jack thought back to the first time he met Titan, the dog who had changed everything. He had been so lost then, so overwhelmed by the weight of his past. But now, with Titan, everything felt clearer. They had both been broken in their own way, but together, they had healed. Jack's thoughts were interrupted when he heard the familiar sound of the doorbell. Titan's head lifted, his ears perked, and he looked at Jack, as if asking for permission to get up. "It's okay, buddy," Jack said softly, patting the dog's head. Titan wagged his tail and padded toward the door, Jack following slowly behind. As Jack opened the door, he was met by the smiling face of his neighbor, Sarah. "I brought you some more of that homemade stew I know you love," she said, holding a pot in her hands. "Figured you might appreciate something warm on a night like this." Jack smiled, grateful for her thoughtfulness. "Thank you, Sarah," he said, stepping aside to let her in. "You're always so kind." Sarah set the pot down on the kitchen counter, and Titan, as always, was there beside her, wagging his tail, eager for a treat or a scratch behind the ears. Sarah laughed as she bent down to give Titan some attention. You've certainly got him trained well, she teased. He's the one who trained me, Jack replied, a chuckle escaping his lips. As Sarah helped him set the table, Jack felt a sense of peace settle in his chest. Life had changed in ways he never thought possible. Where there had once been a constant ache in his heart, now there was a quiet warmth. A warmth that came from knowing he wasn't alone, from knowing that even in the toughest of times, Titan was there. The simple moments of sharing a meal, of sitting together in the quiet of the evening, meant more to him now than any victory on the battlefield ever had. As they ate, Sarah and Jack talked about the little things, her latest gardening project, the new cafe in town, and the upcoming holiday season. Titan sat quietly at their feet, content to simply be in their company. As the conversation flowed, Jack felt a profound sense of gratitude for everything he had. It wasn't about what he had lost anymore. It was about what he had found. The journey had been difficult, but in the end, he had found something more valuable than anything he could have ever imagined. He had found home in Titan's eyes, in the quiet companionship they shared, in the love that had healed them both. And as the night drew to a close, Jack knew that no matter what the future held, he would face it with Titan by his side, ready to embrace whatever came next. The road ahead may have been uncertain, but for the first time in years, Jack was certain of one thing. He was exactly where he was meant to be. The days turned into months, and Jack's life continued to flourish in ways he could never have anticipated. The change had come so gradually that it was sometimes hard to recognize. But every morning, as the first light of day streamed through the window, Jack woke with a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. Titan, his faithful companion, was always there, ready to greet the day with boundless energy. They had settled into a quiet rhythm, their lives intertwined in a way that felt natural, as if it had always been this way. It was early spring, and the scent of fresh flowers filled the air as Jack and Titan took their daily walk through the park. The trees were beginning to bloom, and the sky, a brilliant blue, stretched endlessly above them. Titan walked beside him, his presence reassuring and constant, guiding Jack through the world as he always had. Jack's steps felt lighter now, his heart no longer weighed down by the grief and uncertainty that had once consumed him. Every step he took was accompanied by the rhythmic sound of Titan's paws on the ground, a comforting, familiar sound that had become a part of the soundtrack to Jack's life. As they passed familiar landmarks, like the old bench by the pond where they had spent so many afternoons, Jack couldn't help but smile. Life had become simpler, yet so much richer. Jack had come to realize that it wasn't the big, dramatic moments that mattered most, but the small, everyday ones. The quiet mornings with Titan, the sound of birds singing in the trees, the feeling of the sun on his face. These were the things that made life meaningful. One afternoon, as they sat together on the porch, Jack reflected on how much he had changed since he first met Titan. He had been broken, both physically and emotionally, but now he was whole. The healing had come slowly, but it had come nonetheless, and Titan had been at the center of it all. Jack looked down at the dog beside him, his heart swelling. With gratitude. I owe you everything, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Titan, as always, seemed to understand. He lifted his head and gently nudged Jack's hand, his warm eyes meeting Jack's gaze as if to say, "We're in this together." Jack chuckled softly and patted Titan's head. "We sure are, buddy. We sure are." The sun began to set, casting a soft, golden glow across the yard. Jack and Titan watched in silence, content to simply be in each other's company. The past, with all its pain and struggles, had faded into the distance, and the future, while still uncertain, no longer seemed as daunting. With Titan by his side, Jack knew he could face whatever came next. Together,